My name is Alvin Brown. I'm a tax attorney. Topic today is penalty abatement. When taxpayers file their tax returns and there's an adjustment on the return of 10% or more, or $5,000, there's going to be an automatic penalty. It's 20% penalty for understated tax liability. The penalty, the negligence penalty, can be abated for reasonable cause. A reasonable cause generally is something that is beyond your control. You relied on a tax return preparer or CPA or attorney, and it's their fault. There was an illness of the family. That was the reason. So there's also a non-filing penalty of 25%. And the 25% penalty for non-filing can also be abated for reasonable cause, although it's much harder to do that. There is a civil fraud penalty of 75% of the tax debt, and the IRS has approved civil fraud by clear and convincing evidence. That's a big deal. The reasons why there is civil fraud, the IRS does make it appear as if something was done that was willful. You can't have a civil fraud penalty unless the IRS perception is that the understatement of tax was willful. There is, of course, criminal sanctions that are not penalties, but certainly one can go to jail for 5 years or more for doing something that's willful intent to evade. That's the IRS approved those cases beyond a reasonable doubt. But back to the negligence penalty, that's the one that we see the most. And normally, the IRS is going to say certain deductions were not substantiated, and they can put a negligence penalty in there for any amount. In other words, the first penalty that I discussed was the automatic penalty if you have $5,000 or more, or 10% additional charge. The Internal Revenue Code makes that a statutory penalty. But the IRS at any point in time can find that anything that you didn't return because you didn't substantiate something in compliance with a regulation, even if it's under $5,000, they can take the view that it was done negligently. Normally what I do with regard to negligence penalty is I write a memorandum on the facts and the law, tell the IRS why the penalty shouldn't be applied. So I would have to do the research. There are regulations that deal with the negligence penalty, but the only example in the regulations that deal with negligence penalty is that the person relied on a professional, and a professional can be an accountant, a bookkeeper, or an attorney. And for that reason, it's always a good idea to have somebody else do returns, and if a mistake is made, it's their mistake, and that would probably justify abating the penalties. What the IRS likes to do is they like to get taxpayers to agree to an audit examination, and once that's agreed upon, then they hit them with the penalty. In most cases, they're always going to try and file the negligence penalty. So most taxpayers just accept it and walk away with it. It's 20% more of your tax debt. It's a lot of money. In a lot of the cases that we see, the penalties are quite large. In any event, there's a huge amount of litigation that deals with penalties and penalty abatement. And so, therefore, any position that we do have has to be supported by the decisions, of course, that favor your case. If you have any questions about penalty abatement, let me get into this topic of interest abatement. Interest is a very difficult thing. I get a lot of questions about, can we get interest abated? The interest number is a very high number. Well, the problem with interest abatement is that the statute that allows for interest abatement only allows it if there is some delay on the part of the IRS, normally ministerial delay on the part of the IRS. There is really very little technical room to argue that interest should be abated, because Congress simply didn't allow, or has not really given us too much technical room to argue the point. So it's maybe in the last 10 years I only had one case where the IRS was clearly dilatory. I won the case and the interest abated was over $1 million. But that's unusual. The IRS normally doesn't wait 16 years before they make an audit determination. So that's pretty much summarizes that. If you have any questions about abatements of penalties, please give me a call. You can reach us at 888-712-7690. My personal extension is 106. Do apologize a little bit for the informal way that I give these presentations, but I sort of treat this audience as if you were sitting across my desk and we're having this discussion. Now, call me if you have any questions and if you have a problem, and of course, it's probably not worthwhile doing unless you owe them a lot of money. Thanks for listening.